Riya's beauty was a quiet thing, like the first, perfect lotus bloom at dawn. It wasn't the kind that screamed for attention. It was the kind that commanded respect through its sheer, undeniable grace. She possessed a classic Indian complexion, a warm, rich honey tone that belonged in ancient paintings, and eyes that held the quiet certainty of deep, still water. Her husband, Vikram, however, craved noise. Vikram was a rising executive in the high-stakes world of disruptive tech. His world was defined by viral marketing, aggressive statements, and the appearance of ceaseless, boundary-pushing liberal modernity. He was not a traditionalist. He was an optics man. When they married 5 years ago, Riya's elegance was a trophy. The perfect, graceful bride, an embodiment of the heritage Vikram was ostensibly rising above. But as his career ascended, the trophy began to feel like a liability. "Riya, darling, look at this," Vikram would say, gesturing to a sleek magazine spread featuring an architect's wife in a sharp, avant-garde suit. "That is statement dressing. When we go to the venture capital dinner, you are wearing that silk sari. It's beautiful, yes, but it's quiet. We need to look like we're leading the conversation, not serving the tea." Riya, who chose her clothes for comfort, quality, and the story the textile told, felt a slow, psychological erosion begin. She wasn't refusing to be modern. She simply defined modernity as the freedom to choose self-respect and tradition, not the compulsion to shed it. "My silence is a statement, Vikram," she once offered, but he dismissed it with a patronizing chuckle. "Silence is background noise, Riya. I need a co-pilot who is front-page news. A partner who can hold a high-volume conversation about NFTs and neo-feminist theory without looking like she'd rather be arranging flowers." The truth was, Vikram didn't want a partner. He wanted a reflection, one that amplified the image of the boundary-breaking, effortlessly cool executive he desperately wanted to be. Riya, with her preference for classic cinema, her minimal makeup, and her quiet, sincere conversations, was a glitch in his carefully curated image. The shift accelerated during the launch of Vikram's new, highly publicized social media platform, The Pulse. He began spending nights at the office, claiming the pressure was unbearable. The scent of a foreign, sharp, chemical-laden perfume occasionally clung to his clothes, a stark contrast to Riya's preferred sandalwood. Riya, trusting and deeply committed, initially dismissed the signs. She knew the stress of the tech world. She cooked his favorite meals, kept their apartment an island of calm, and retreated further into her own world of literature and classical dance practice. The very quietness he found boring. The genuine, brutal truth surfaced not through anger, but through a cold, technological trail, ironically, on Vikram's own Pulse platform. Riya received a notification intended for Vikram. A tagged photo from a party she had specifically been told was men only. The photo showed Vikram in a tight embrace with a woman whose entire presence was a visual manifesto of the liberal modern aesthetic. Razor-sharp angles, neon-colored hair extensions, leather that looked expensive and uncomfortable, and a loud, performative confidence that demanded attention. Her name was Karina. She was a fast-rising fashion publicist, notorious for turning mediocrity into spectacle. She was exactly the statement Riya was not. Riya confronted Vikram the next morning. She did not yell. She simply placed her phone on the breakfast bar, the image of him and Karina visible. Vikram did not deny it. He didn't even look guilty. He looked impatient, as if she were wasting valuable marketing time. "So you know," he said, sighing dramatically. "It's been going on for 6 months. Karina understands the game, Riya. She is the game." Riya's voice was dangerously low, a deep tremor of suppressed pain. "What game, Vikram? The game of deceit, or the game of performing a life you don't actually live? The game of relevance," he snapped, his voice rising in professional frustration. "Look at you. You're stunning, yes. You are perfect symmetry, perfect proportion. You are a masterpiece, Riya, but you are not a statement. You're invisible in a crowd of noise. Karina is noise. Karina moves the needle." He delivered the final, crushing blow, justifying his betrayal through the lens of his career image. "I need a partner who looks like she just flew in from the future. You look like you just stepped out of a temple. I'm sorry, Riya, but you're not modern enough for my destiny." the pain wasn't just the betrayal of the marriage vows. It was the rejection of her very soul. The simplicity, the quiet dignity, the heritage she held dear, everything she was defined by the man who vowed to cherish her as unscalable, commercially irresponsible. Riya didn't argue. She realized the gilded cage wasn't her home. It was his carefully crafted stage. She packed one suitcase, leaving behind the expensive, uncomfortable clothes he had tried to force on her. She took only her books, her simple silk scarves, and her classical dance ankle bells. She left Vikram's world of noise and drove 300 miles back to her childhood home in a small, quiet town outside Jaipur, the city of pink hues and unwavering traditions. Riya's family home, though humble, was an architecture of love and acceptance. Her parents, traditional but fiercely supportive, wrapped her in silence and saris. The silence was the greatest healer. For the first 6 months, Riya focused on just existing. The divorce proceeded quickly. Vikram, eager to scrub the stain of the traditional wife from his public profile, conceded everything. To find purpose, Riya started teaching classical dance and basic textile arts to young girls from economically disadvantaged backgrounds. She didn't teach them to perform. She taught them discipline, posture, and the quiet dignity of grace. One monsoon afternoon, an old, dented ambassador car pulled up outside the community center. A woman stepped out, tall, formidable, and radiating an aura of disciplined power. She wore a simple white cotton suit and had a silver bun braided with a single jasmine flower. She introduced herself as Anjali Menon. The name meant nothing to Riya, but to anyone involved in the world of beauty and fashion, Anjali Menon was a legend. A former Miss Asia who had retired years ago after a bitter, public critique of the pageant industry's descent into plastic superficiality. She had retreated to teach classical arts. Anjali sat in the back of the dance hall for 3 sessions, saying nothing. Riya was deeply unnerved. Finally, Anjali approached Riya. "You teach them the Adavu basic footwork with such intent, Riya. You teach them that the most powerful movements are rooted in balance, not flair." "I am teaching them self-respect," Riya replied simply. "And you teach it well," Anjali said, her eyes piercing. "But you do not practice it, you are hiding." "I am simply living quietly," Riya countered. "No," Anjali corrected, her voice sharp. "You are letting a small, shallow man define your visibility. I watched you. You are naturally statuesque, your posture is immaculate, and you possess an authentic, rare beauty that the world of manufactured perfection has forgotten exists. Your simplicity is a geological phenomenon in a world of plastic." Anjali's observation was the shock Riya needed. It wasn't about the beauty, it was about the platform. "Riya, I want you to compete for Miss India," Anjali stated. Riya laughed, a harsh, disbelieving sound. "I am a recently divorced, quiet woman who hates makeup and was rejected for being unmodern. You want me to join a pageant? The modern world needs a genuine statement, not another imitation," Anjali argued passionately. "The Miss World stage is the world's most visible platform for superficiality. If you, Riya Sharma, in all your quiet grace, your minimal enhancements, and your devotion to substance, can win, you don't just win a crown. You prove that a billion women's simple, chosen beauty is valid. You prove that authenticity is the ultimate statement. Use that platform for your girls, Riya." Riya realized this wasn't about vindication for Vikram. It was about validating her philosophy. If she could win with the qualities Vikram rejected, she could redefine the very conversation he claimed to lead. She agreed. "I will compete for the platform, but I will not change my foundation. I will not wear a statement I do not believe in." The training process became a spiritual, rather than superficial, transformation. While other contestants underwent grueling sessions of radical diet change, aggressive cosmetic treatments, and media coaching designed to scrub their regional accents, Riya's routine was different. 1. Posture and grace, hours of classical dance, not for choreography, but for the quiet internal strength of the spine. 2. Wardrobe. Anjali insisted on using only Indian handloom textiles, simple silks, natural dyes, and flowing fabrics that celebrated her rich complexion and natural curves, not restricted them. Riya's national gown, a deep jewel-toned handloom, felt like an embrace of her heritage. 3. The smile, no rehearsed, wide-mouthed pageant smile. Anjali coached her to let her eyes smile first, an expression of genuine inner joy and respect. 4. The Q&A. Riya did not memorize political sound bites. She studied ethics, history, and sociology, focusing on forming responses rooted in deep, simple truth. The other contestants saw Riya as an anomaly, an elegant relic. "She's too quiet," they whispered. "Her makeup is barely visible. She's too safe." The night of the Miss India final arrived. Riya moved with a presence that seemed out of place among the hyper-styled women. Her talent segment was not a flashy pop dance. It was a pure, unadorned classical dance piece, performed barefoot, where every delicate movement told a story of devotion and internal balance. In the final interview round, Riya was asked, "In an age of digital activism, how do you define modern, liberal feminism?" The other contestants had delivered loud speeches about breaking glass ceilings and rejecting tradition. Riya, however, looked directly into the camera, her quiet voice resonating with power. "Modern feminism, to me, is not the compulsion to reject tradition, but the freedom to choose it with dignity. True liberalism is the right to define yourself outside of performance. My grandmother's self-respect, rooted in her culture, is just as powerful as my ability to speak on this stage. True liberation is the freedom to be complex, to be quiet, and to define worth from within. The greatest feminist statement is simply being your authentic self." The audience was silent for a breath, then erupted. It was a statement that validated every woman who didn't want to choose between heritage and ambition. Riya won Miss India. The simplicity that was once her curse was now her crown. The win sent shockwaves. Media was obsessed with her story. The authentic queen, the quiet revolution. She was instantly dubbed the anti-pageant contestant. Vikram, watching the news from his high-rise apartment, was in disbelief. His unmarketable ex-wife was a national phenomenon. His publicist, Karina, was now furious as the narrative was shifting. Vikram Alcott, the man who couldn't recognize gold. Vikram made a desperate move, attempting to regain control. He drove to Jaipur, showing up at the community center in a crisp white shirt, offering Riya flowers and a rehearsed apology. "Riya," he murmured, attempting a look of intense sincerity. "I was wrong. I was blind to your potential. I always knew you were destined for greatness. We can get back together. Imagine the power couple we would be now. We can redefine the narrative together." Riya looked at him, her expression calm, her eyes now completely empty of pain, only clarity. "Vikram," she said softly, "you didn't fail to see my potential. You failed to see my worth. The woman standing here today is not new. She is simply no longer hidden by your inadequacy. The moment you define me by my statement, you reveal that you still cannot see the masterpiece. I am not for sale, and I am certainly not available for rebranding." She dismissed him with the quiet dignity he had once scorned. Vikram was left standing alone, grasping flowers, realizing that the platform he craved was forever out of his reach. The Miss World competition in London was the ultimate battleground of aesthetics. Riya was an anomaly among the finalists, who were all highly polished, impeccably styled, and universally adhering to the standard westernized global beauty template. Riya's presence was a visual rebellion. Her evening gown was a fluid, emerald green silk, minimally embroidered, allowing the fabric and her natural glow to be the star. Her jewelry was antique, her makeup designed only to enhance her features, not reconstruct them. She was the crowd favorite, not for drama, but for her serene, grounded power. The audience, weary of manufactured perfection, recognized the relief of authenticity. The final round came down to the top 3. The stakes were immense. An Asian win based on such a powerful philosophy would shift global beauty standards for decades. The final question was posed to Riya. In an increasingly interconnected world, how should we define a single global standard of beauty, and what role does heritage play in it? The lights were blinding, the tension palpable. Riya stood tall, her posture impeccable, a geometry learned from centuries of classical dance. "We must resist the urge to define a single standard because beauty is not a factory," Riya began, her voice steady and clear. If we seek one standard, we lose the magic of the millions of standards that make our world vibrant. My complexion, my hair, my heritage, they are not features to be apologized for or lightened or altered for global acceptance. She paused, looking at the other contestants, then back at the judge. My heritage is not a liability to be masked. It is the foundation upon which my true self is built. The only universal standard we should accept is grace, the quiet dignity of accepting and celebrating the unique masterpiece you were born to be. That grace, rooted in self-acceptance, is the only statement that needs no translation. The auditorium dissolved into thunderous applause. The simplicity of her truth hit with the force of a hurricane. It was not just an answer. It was a cultural correction. The announcer's voice boomed. And the new Miss World is Miss India, Riya Sharma. The crown settled on her head, minimal and sparkling, resting against her dark, lustrous hair. Riya cried, not tears of joy, but tears of powerful relief. She had won with her truth, not in spite of it. The simplicity that led to her betrayal had led her to global vindication. Riya used her platform to launch the Contrast and Context Foundation, dedicated to funding arts programs for women globally and promoting traditional textile and art forms as the highest form of self-expression. Vikram's career, meanwhile, imploded. His association with the superficial Karina and the public revelation of his cruel, shallow judgment of Riya made him the living embodiment of the fake statement she had defeated. The Pulse platform crashed, ironically killed by a world that finally valued authenticity over noise. Years later, Riya stood in a quiet, sunlit room in her new foundation headquarters. She wore a simple white handloom sari. She looked in the mirror. Her beauty was unchanged, classic, warm, and true. She hadn't transformed into a new woman. She had merely unveiled the one who was always there. The simplicity that was once mistaken for invisibility now shone with a light that was truly blinding, because it was eternal. She had proven, on the world's most superficial stage, that true beauty is not in the statement, but in the soul.